the temporary rules have been in effect in November. Now we want to make changes. One of those changes is with regards to employees in vehicles. And there are a number of concerns here. What they want is they want one employee per vehicle. And that is not practical in all situations. Now, their desire, they requirement that that this is explore days, and if it can't be done, there are okay, you can put extra people in the vehicle. You have to keep those open the entire time, and other requirements about having multiple employees in a vehicle. Here's the concern. Employees do not follow the rules. By definition, the employees are operating on their own. It's highly unlikely that there's going to be a supervised vehicle with them, and the employer doesn't know what's going on in that vehicle. In employment legislation, employers who have required employees to have vehicles as a means of to work have been determined to have been guilty of discrimination, because employees of certain ethnic backgrounds are less likely to have vehicles than employees of other ethnic backgrounds. Certainly true of employees of different economic backgrounds. So if you require employees to drive their own vehicles, are employers guilty of discrimination? This creates a huge liability risk for employers. Next concern is what's called a hazard communication standard. It is confusing. So within the OSHA rules, there are requirements that employers wipe down surfaces and take steps to disinfect the workplace. Well, now there's added a provision that cleaning chemicals might trigger certain record keeping requirements, but they don't specify which chemicals require that. Instead, they add employers into a whole new set of administrative rules. It is tough for a lot of businesses out there operating during the pandemic. You hear that the stock market is doing well, you hear that certain businesses are doing well, but I'll tell you right now, if you take out the high-tech companies, if you take out the social media companies, if you take out the online retailers, the stock market is in a tailspin. And that certainly is true of small employers. There are winners and there are losers. And now you're saying that if you have a cleaning crew and if they use disinfectants, which you're supposed to be doing, now they have to research their disinfectants and have to learn a whole new body of law on what disinfectants trigger these communication standards. That is another burden which business shouldn't have to face. Okay, in November, the OSHA temporary rules implied requirements for ventilation. One of the requirements is that you have to change filters. That makes perfect sense. Another requirement is you have to, if it is possible with the ventilation system to turn off recirculating so that instead makeup air is brought in from the outside, then you have to do that. Well, there certainly is a cost of heating cold air from the outside during the winter instead of recirculating in indoor air. but employers had to do that. Well, within the ventilation requirements, as with the other rules, there are shall to the maximum extent possible. There's ambiguity in some of the language that is used. Well, now what they want to do is the proposed permanent rules contain a provision that employees with 10 employees or more must certify in writing that they are complying with the ventilation requirements. This is a legal trap. This brings smiles to the attorneys who are plaintiffs' attorneys, those who like to sue businesses and other defendants. They want these ventilation systems to be serviced quarterly. A lot of small businesses, their systems are serviced annually, and as the owner of a small business, those costs are not insubstantial. Okay, exposure notification records. Here is a concern. So if an employer has an employee that has been exposed to someone who tested positive for COVID, they must notify employees. But now they want to keep those notification records for 30 years. And the purpose for it is unknown. It hasn't been explained. It hasn't been described. Quite frankly, I'm not smart enough to figure out why they want, but I suspect I'm smart enough to know that it's not for a reason that is good for business. A lot of times OSHA requires records be kept to help OSHA with compliance down the road if there's a problem. What's OSHA going to do with these records in year 24 or year 29? This makes no sense, and it imposes a burden on businesses with no known benefit. All right. Vaccination. I don't know how many people in this group are pro-vaccination, and I don't know how many people are, I suspect there may be one or two civil libertarians within the group who don't want to be told by the government when and how they should be vaccinated. But employers, there are a number of vaccination requirements set out in these proposed permanent rules. I think they want employers to be an ally in ensuring that people get vaccinated. And if an employee refuses to get vaccinated, they want the employee to sign a form, and they have a proposed format of form that they want them to sign. And they want to require the employers to keep those records as medical records. Well, let me tell you, the medical record requirements are burdensome. They are so burdensome that over the last several decades, smart employers and employers who have listened to the advice of smart lawyers have all said, we don't keep medical records. They purge personnel files to make sure there is nothing in those files that could be contained as a medical record. And there is a cost, there is a burden, and there is risk associated with doing so. Guess what? OSHA wants to impose that on every employer with one or more employees. That is a concern. Then there's a provision that they want employers to have new communications with employees to let the employees know every type of paid time off that the employee is entitled to. Well, guess what? Employers already do that. So for the so for every act that imposes leave requirements and every act that imposes paid leave requirements, they all come with a form of poster that employers are supposed to provide. Well, now they want employers to have some sort of an additional notice to employees. And it's not as if employers don't have a hard enough time right now continuing to do business. For my larger clients who have full-time, in-house, professional HR people, yeah, maybe this isn't that big a deal. But for everyone else, it is. And I was on the phone right before this call with an in-house HR person, and this person's absolutely swamped. And we're dealing with a number of issues, and even the full-time in-house people, I don't think they have time for all this, but they are going to have to make time or face the wrath of OSHA and face potential liability from plaintiffs' attorneys. Steve, that's pretty much my two-bit summary of what OSHA is trying to do to you now. Of course, you know, OSHA is trying to help us, so I guess we all ought to be thankful for that.
Well, thank you. I think that's scary and interesting at the same time. Does anybody have any questions that they'd like to ask Alan?
I do, Steve.
Okay.
I'm just wondering how are OSHA people put in the positions to make these regulations? Are they just unelected bureaucrats? Who are they?
You got it.
They are the OSHA director is appointed by the governor, and then the director makes his or her hires. These are bureaucrats.
Okay, well, looks like to me, and I hate to be so pessimistic, but it's still the same old thing. My husband had a business back in the 80s, ornamental iron in California, and he got rid of it because of this constant squelching, making it almost impossible for him to continue his business. So nothing has changed. I mean, we had one guy who was pro-business and he's gone now, and we're right back in business with these people who are out of control, who love the power, and it just sickens me, truly sickens me. I don't know, I'm sorry if I'm pessimistic, but I'm very annoyed.
Well, you're absolutely right, and it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And let's see if I might have a copy of this. A while ago, a number of years ago now, I created a table that listed all of the employment laws affecting employers, and then it categorized those laws based upon the number of employee threshold before the laws kicked in. And I did a similar table for the federal law. So state, printed it front and back, state on one side, federal on the other. And the list is staggering. So that year I had arranged for a meeting of about, I don't know, 12 to 18 local legislators with Eugene, Springfield area business people. And I passed out that list to them, and I listened to them, and they go, we had no idea that there were so many laws. Well, here's what happens is you get elected to public office and you have a feeling that you need to make something happen. And they don't pay any attention to what's already there because that's not them. They're there to make something happen, so they impose new laws. So let's make it more difficult. Let's add additional requirements on employers. It is known that COVID spread in Oregon it happens through social contact, not through contact in the workplace. And yet when our numbers spiked, what did the governor do? She shut down businesses. Did that have any effect? No. But it was a way of showing we are doing something, even though it was people in their social lives that were causing the problems. So you're absolutely right. It keeps getting worse. Oregon, with control of the Democratic control of the legislature, Oregon has continued to look to California for policies in all kinds of areas that affect business, which are those are the areas that I follow. And so Oregon does what California does, but then Oregon tries to out progressive California. If you look at how well things are going in California, you would think maybe we would look to a different model, but that is not the case.
OSHA is accepting comments up until April 2nd on this rule.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are.
This is John Quilter, and I have a question. As far as regarding keeping medical records, isn't that it's somewhat in conflict with HIPAA laws that basically will not allow the disclosure of any medical information on anybody to anybody?
So medical records must be maintained in compliance with HIPAA requirements. So maintaining the record is one thing, disclosing the record is something else.
This is Steve. Is Oregon kind of operating at the same level that the rest of the states around the country are, or does it vary greatly from state to state?
What do you mean by operating at the same level?
Well, the same restrictions, the same, keeping businesses, making roadblocks for businesses. Is it like that everywhere? Or because you really never hear, from state to state, because I assume this is a states' rights thing, not a federal.
I think it's a little bit of both, much to the annoyance of some people. It is more state than federal, but things are very different in Florida and Texas and a number of other states than they are in Oregon. There have been reports that there was some sort of a compact between the governors of Washington, Oregon, and California that they would adopt similar sort of provisions. I don't know if they've been following that because at least the governor in California seems to have a few problems that he's looking at. My daughter goes to school in California, and she's home on spring break right now, but we'll be going back. And so Oregon, Washington, California are supposed to be operating together, but still, when she goes back to California from Oregon, she's going to have to quarantine for 10 days before she can attend in-person classes. Now, at her school, which is just 40 miles north of San Diego, they're able to put up tents and have class outside. I guess that's something you can do when your weather is nice year round. Something I don't think that has occurred to Oregon and Oregon State. But. So anyway, to answer your question, it does vary state by state, but a lot of states seem to be working in lockstep and with just minor fluctuations between those states.
Hey, Alan, Sid Lycan here. I'm baffled on the 30-year. I really am, because when you look at looking at your financial records, you're actually asked to keep those for no more than 7. And so I find that baffling, the 30-year piece, and what that'll eventually do. To Steve's question that he asked, the answer is Oregon and New Mexico are the 2 most restricted states in the country right now as we speak. And
Wow.
I'll give you an idea. My eldest son and his wife in 2 weeks will be living in the Austin, Texas area, and not Austin proper, but will be living in the suburbs. I wanted to give you an idea of what it's like. He just has been hired for a comparable job that he has here in Oregon. Only the difference is he will be making $15,000 a year more. and the cost of living is less. And by the way, they're a young married couple. They just bought their first home, 1,400 square foot, brand new home for $236,000.
Wow.
And you cannot even begin to dream about that here in Oregon, unfortunately. And when you talk about the West Coast, the compact that occurred, I think Oregon kind of went on their own a little bit more, because she's got this extreme high, the rating system that's just been baffling to me as well. But again, when you compare to California, the last I checked, we are not the 5th or 6th largest economy in the world. That's the last time I checked. California still is. By the way, people don't realize Texas is now the 9th largest economy in the world, and it continues to explode. But Alan, I really appreciate this, because I think what this tells, it should tell people that the OSHA is really looking at, I get confused sometimes with the organization they are, but for years as a small business owner, you said it perfectly. I didn't have an HR person. I was the HR person. And that may be the case when you're a larger company and you actually have an HR director. It probably is a little bit easier to navigate through the issues and also to be heard. Whereas a small business owner, the joke used to be, you can work any hours of the day you want. Yep, any 18 hours of the day I want to work, I can work. And that used to be what it is. But Alan, I do appreciate this. This is really eye-opening, and it tells me that apparently Oregon does not want white-collar professionals like my son, my daughter-in-law. They don't want them here anymore, so they have made a choice, and their choice is it's not worth it. They're leaving, and unfortunately, I think you're going to see that more and more. You're going to see people saying, you know what, I don't have to be here. Idaho seems to be pretty open, and Nevada's pretty open. Montana, Utah. I mean, all the surrounding states around us are open. And one last thing I'll mention, and that is this. I don't know if you heard the news yesterday, but Intel announced they're making an investment, a $20 billion investment. Oh, by the way, it's in Chandler, Arizona, and not Hillsboro. And so I don't know if anybody heard that one. So it's in Chandler, and unfortunately, they're not going to make that investment in Hillsboro. Alan, again, thank you. I really appreciate it. It's a lot of great information, and as usual, by the way, Alan's my personal attorney, so he's always done great work for me. So anyway, thank you, Alan.
Well, thanks. When are we moving to Utah, Sid?
Well, you know what? Debbie and I were just in Arizona, and I got to tell you, Goodyear, Arizona, may be calling our name. So.
Oh, Arizona now. Okay.
Gary, I think you were gonna ask something.
I was just going to say, for Sid, who's looking what to call OSHA, call them the brown shirts.
Good point. This is Steve again, and I think that they're very clever, OSHA, and I don't know if it's on purpose or not, but the demands that we're asked to abide by really aren't. They're not enforceable by the police department. They're actually, it's actually like if I go to Bi-Mart, if I don't want to wear a mask, I get Bi-Mart in trouble, not me, or not OSHA doesn't come after me. Is that? And I thought, what a clever way to do law enforcement is have the businesses actually enforce it. Is that on purpose, do you think?
Oh, heck yes. Heck yes. And actually, technically, you two are obligated to wear a mask in these public settings. The directives from the governor apply to both business and the individuals, but it's the business with whom they try to exert their levers of influence. It's like the story about the straw that broke the camel's back. Is they keep adding more and more and more regulations on business, more and more tax on business, more and more limitations on the way you can do business. I am fortunate that I do represent a number of business people And I think to a person, they all said that if they were to start their business today, they would not start in Oregon. And Sid was talking about his son who has opportunities outside of Austin. We're going to be losing more and more of our sons and daughters as they pursue opportunities elsewhere.
Say, this is Glenn. Alan, how can the emergency exist if the Queen does not ask for and get legislative support? You may have covered this a little bit.
Well, not today, but I think I did discuss this in a prior meeting with you all. And notwithstanding what the Oregon statute says, the Oregon Supreme Court said I was wrong.
So she's gotten the court to back her up, and that's de facto law as opposed to our Constitution and statutes.
Yes, I was not a, I wasn't involved in that lawsuit. I wasn't one of the attorneys of record, but I did consult with the attorneys of record, and they actually integrated some of the arguments that I had been advancing. In fact, I first advanced those arguments on Bill London's show. I know he's your next guest, so please say hi to Bill for me. Also, if someone wants to ask him a question, ask him about the mask he was wearing at Jay Bozovich's summer party this last August. Ask him about that. I won't step on the answer to that one, but if actually whoever asked the question, he may know where it came from. But any event, I followed that case very carefully, and then Bill London asked me what the Oregon Supreme Court would do, and I said, sadly, we're seeing more and more where it doesn't seem like we're following the rule of law any longer, and that I suspect that the Supreme Court will find a way to support the governor during a pandemic, and that is what happened. So, Glenn, you asked a great question. I don't know the answer to it, but evidently the people on your Supreme Court said the governor can do what she's doing.
Well, that's troubling. Does anybody else have any questions or comments? Yes.
Yeah. Am I on?
Yes,
Can you
you
hear
are.
me? Okay.
All I can do is
It
talk.
seems to me, I've gone to Along Came Trudy's several times, and a lot of my friends have, and I know she's getting fined up the gazoo. And I wrote to John Lively, my state representative, and I indicated that I thought that OSHA's fines were excessive. I don't know what's your feeling on how do they decide to set these fines?
So I happen to know from sources that I probably shouldn't reveal that the OSHA investigators are very conflicted about the orders coming down from OSHA in Salem. And in some instances that I'm aware of, Salem has told them to do certain things, and at least the Eugene OSHA investigators have refused to do so. In one instance, and this was, I believe, a restaurant or diner in Roseburg, I believe, one OSHA investigator said he was the only one in the Eugene office who would go down and do it. And he did it, and he posted a notice. And the notice included his OSHA provided cell phone. And the response with the calls to his cell phone after posting that notice was so severe that OSHA had to cancel that number and give him a different number. But one of the concerns that local OSHA inspectors have expressed, and I am told this is what's called hearsay. Someone told me, and I'm telling you, that's hearsay. But among their concerns is the way they've been issuing rules and orders without following proper rulemaking procedure. Now, that's not a problem with these permanent rules because they are following proper rulemaking procedure, even if we don't like what they're coming out with. But you know, you ask a question, it's a very good question, and the concerns are so great that even people within OSHA itself share concerns similar to yours. Thank you for that question.
I got a question, Alan.
Dick, good to see you.
Hey, I'm still alive, barely. The question I have is, why hasn't there been a concerted effort of all the businesses to do a combined pushback against the government issuing these orders? Why don't we all get together, all you attorneys, and do a combined pushback?
Yeah, for years I've been advocating, and in fact, this was long before things were as bad as they are today. For years, I've been advocating that there should be a business strike. Just one day, every business unites, gets together and say, listen, we are on strike. We're not hiring employees today. We're not paying employees for the day. We're not providing goods and services to those people who need it. We're not paying taxes for today. And just to show that how important business is and the power they have. Of course, one of the problems with businesses is that some bright business person would figure out, wait a minute, if all my competitors are closed today, I'm going to stay open and I'm going to have exclusive sales and I might even add to my market share. So that obviously hasn't happened. I think the closest thing that you have been referring to has probably been timber unity. A lot of the people who are supportive of timber unity are not in the timber business, but they are just general business people. I would, as I think you could tell, I would like to see that happen. Dick, one other thing, I don't know if you are aware, I know that you knew my father, but sadly my father died in January, and I mention that just because you usually ask about my parents.
Absolutely. I'm sorry to hear that.
Well, thank you.
Sorry. Oh.
This is Glenn. Trudy's in Springfield has not paid any fines. She's getting recommendations on that. And after the first inspector showed up for about a week and a half, 2 weeks, people were outside her door with open carry and flags. And there was a sign on the door that no government administrators were allowed. They'd be considered trespassers. So there is pushback. She is hung out there by herself, but there is pushback here and there.
And she's still being fined. You know, I don't know with the new openings if that's reduced, but as far as I understand, they upped her daily fine because she refused to comply, so they upped it even more. And I know she has an attorney. I don't know if she has any recourse or not.
Hey, Alan, this is Steve. What about a class action lawsuit where the businesses could join and you know, at least there would be publicity that the businesses were injured and fighting back?
So that lawsuit was filed very early on. That was the, and it was brought in the name of who they thought would be the most sympathetic plaintiffs who had the best chance of prevailing. And those were the churches. You may remember that. Started in the Baker area. And they got a great ruling at the Baker County Circuit Court, but got shot down by the Oregon Court of Appeals. So there is a coalition of business people that are business associations that may be bringing suit for these OSHA permanent rules. And so we'll see what happens, whether that comes to fruition or not.
Is that a group that's coalesced enough that we could get, I could call them to be a speaker as time goes on?
Well, the groups are a number of business trade associations, and I'm not sure which ones are part of the coalition.
Okay.
So, I mean, it could be like the Oregon Manufacturing Association or the Oregon Restaurant and Lodging Association, groups such as that.
Okay, thank you.
Home builders.
Steve and Alan, this is Leila Trope. Is that the suit that's still pending on the premise of the taking, that it was illegal to stop their businesses and it was considered a taking because they were losing, they were losing their livelihood and their rights? Is that the one that's still pending?
That suit hasn't been filed. It's been several weeks ago now, but I talked to the attorney who has been proposing that.
Is that Kevin?
Yes. No, it's not Kevin. No, it's not Kevin.
No?
Excuse me. Kevin may be involved in some way, but
it's not filed.
They want a very sizable war chest to go to move forward, and I'm actually not I'm not following their takings argument. I raised some questions on that, and they sent for example, they sent a letter out to the governor, and I have that letter, and I've reviewed it, and it was, I don't know, 6 or 7 pages, but they didn't go into any specification on how it constitutes as a legal taking under prior precedents. It just is very conclusory in that, but it goes into a great deal of detail about the governor's various orders and how we got to where we are today. Now the attorney who signed the letter is a big-time attorney. He's the one who obtained that $1 billion verdict against the state of Oregon with the timber case up a little north and east of here. But as far as I know, that suit has not been filed.